and Nick Sharman here with you. What's streaming? We did one of these a couple weeks ago, talk about what we've been watching in streaming lately, and figured it was time to update that a little bit for everybody as
I enjoy it
on, and yeah,
because this new world of 18 different streaming services and is a movie in the theater, is at home, even where you're going to watch your favorite games and teams, it's different. So I always enjoy it. It's a funny thing too, whenever we go out to dinner with friends or something, it's always a conversation, like, what are you guys watching? And it's also funny because I was kind of talking to my daughter about the way things used to be, when now I'm a lot older than you guys, so when I was in high school, you really only had 3 networks. I mean, cable had come around, and there was a programming on cable TV, but they weren't like releasing programmatic content like weekly, like they do now. So back in my day, when you went to school on like a Friday morning, everybody was talking about the Seinfeld or the Cosby Show episode or whatever it was that aired the night before, because everybody was watching the same thing because you only had 2 or 3 options, of shows to watch. Now, like I say, when we go out to dinner with friends, it's like everybody's like telling what you're watching. You're looking for some tips, to find out. So that's kind of what this segment is about. So I guess I'll start with you, Paul. What are you watching? And last night you saw something.
Well, yeah, I want to start with this because I mentioned last week, I couldn't remember what the name of it, or the last time we did this, what the name of it was. 3 Mile Island docuseries I watched called Meltdown 3 Mile Island. So I wasn't far off, I guess, and just calling it 3 Mile Island. But 3 or 4 episodes on Netflix, and it came out last spring. I think I watched it a few months ago in the fall is when I actually found it. So if you're into kind of like the history of
something that hits home locally here too.
Yeah.
I mean, that was certainly something that affected everybody that lived around here.
And, obviously current events, East Palestine, Ohio, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's, a bit of a little bit different, but yeah.
It's a feel-good show.
So you mentioned...
did you ever watch Chernobyl?
No,
on
I
HBO?
Have not,
no. That is amazing. I'd recommend you watch that too. Another feel-good show.
Speaking of feeling good, last night, me and the Felice brothers went out to a movie theater in Geneva, saw Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And
true story too, right?
Yeah,
based
on this, they call it true events. So they took a lot of liberties. Like I'm imagining, for not to spoil too much, I'm imagining that not as many people died in the moment as they depict in the movie with the bear, but
Bear gets into some cocaine somehow, right?
Yeah. So a plane crashes in Chattahoochee National Forest down in Georgia. The pilot had to parachute out, and actually his parachute didn't land. And that a lot of this portion of it's actually very much so true. The pilot, his parachute didn't go off, and he falls in this driveway in Knoxville, Tennessee. So the feds up there kind of investigate. They realize they'll have to figure out where this plane actually ended up landing and falling into.
Yeah.
I don't know if the names are exactly right, but Sid White, who's portrayed by Ray Liotta, his final acting credit actually.
Oh wow, yeah.
This is his final film that he did. Sends a couple of his guys out, son and one of his workers. They go out to try and find the cocaine. Realize that the bear has gotten into the cocaine. There's kids involved.
Why was there cocaine on the plane? Drug trafficking type of situation? So it wasn't just like a little bag, it was like a full shipment.
We're talking each bag is probably worth somewhere in the $14 to $15 million range.
And the bear gets into it.
The bear gets into it. And
such a crazy premise.
I rated it a 7.5 out of 10. Like, my expectations were low. And it actually was a really well done film, I thought. But, it was over the top in some spots where maybe it also needed to be over the top in some spots. There's a scene where the bear, you find out where the bear's den is, and there's a couple cubs. And the cubs pop out of one of the bags, and they're just...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. And they're just coated in cocaine. As one of the characters says, they look like 2 black polar bears. So...
but that's only in theaters right now, right?
Yeah, only in theaters right now. I imagine they'll give it another few weeks here, and they'll probably do that 1 week off and then transition over to digital and everything like that at that point. But I recommend it. Like I said, it was in an hour. It was an hour and a half long. It's not too long, not too short. Very good, I thought.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then you're also what you're watching at home.
So I got Drive to Survive going right now. New season 5 out for that. Follows Formula One. The last year in 2022, a lot of different stuff happened. I don't know if maybe for me, it's good. It's not like I'm not gonna watch the final 5 episodes. I'm halfway through it right now. But compared to the previous 4 seasons, to me, it's not as good. It's jumping around a lot. And I don't know if maybe that's because I'm following more in depth. So a lot of the stuff I kind of
well, that's the problem. The same thing that I'm going to comment on Full Swing, which I watched the last episode of Full Swing on Netflix last night, and I enjoyed the whole series, but is a more intense PGA Tour golf fan in general than maybe the average viewer. It was a little less involved, I guess, than maybe I had hoped it would be. But entertaining nonetheless.
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel the
Definitely.
same way. And those shows are meant for the casual or non-fan as a way to give exposure to those two circuits or tours the individuals and the people that are world-class athletes that participate. So, and I think in that regard, it did. Full Swing, for example, exposed a lot of people to some names on the PGA Tour that they might not have known, or names that they've heard of but didn't really know the person behind it or understand why what they do is so amazing.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing with Drive to Survive. I think a lot of even Formula One fans now are more, maybe not so much fans of the drivers, but the team principals, the guys running the teams. Like, who would have thought that, I don't know if these names resonate much with anybody, but like Gunther Steiner, the team principal for Haas, is just this cult hero now and stuff like that. So one other thing I watched a little bit ago that I forgot to mention, Nolan Ryan, there's a documentary out
on
kidding.
him.
It's on Netflix. It's called Facing Nolan, and it's about it does take a look at his baseball stuff. The baseball stuff is a very key factor in this, as you'll come to learn, but it kind of peels back the onion a little bit on Nolan.
Wow. Which is something that had never been done because he was a Hall of Fame, world-class superstar before the age of, internet and social media where you really get behind just what you're seeing in the games and getting to know these players. And Nolan Ryan was kind of like a mythical type of figure and just amazing pitcher, super long career, all those no-hitters. The show, remember him and Robin Ventura? So there's those types of situations.
That does get touched on.
I bet it does, yeah.
But it's interesting because you bring it up, right? I mean, he's literally a kid from Texas, and more or less was just dropped in New York as a Met. And he talks about kind of all that, how he ends up on the Angels, and at that point from the Angels to the Astros, and kind of really his thought process from going to the Astros to the Rangers even. So,
he did get around.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So that's not new, right?
It's new-ish. So it didn't come out. Netflix, I don't think, had really much of a part in it. I know when I clicked on it, it didn't have the Netflix, how they have the N logo up in the top corner if it's a Netflix-produced thing, and they didn't have it, but they picked it up pretty squared away. And I watched it probably about a month-ish or so ago, and it was really good. If you're a baseball fan, athlete, fan of athletics, I think this certainly fits the bill of kind of, like I said, you peel back the onion on a guy that, has fascinated people for a long time, still is involved in baseball with the Astros. So certainly a guy who's even well in the news to this day anyway.
Got a lot of recommendations for sports content. So I got one that's not related to sports, but before I do, Nate, you watched Full Swing, right? All the episodes?
Yes, I did. I liked Full Swing. It's good.
Yeah. What's your overall thoughts though on it? What anything you would have liked to see that they didn't do?
I'd like to see Max Homa next year. We know so much about him through social media. Great. So I think that'll be a shoe-in for next year. I think they already kind of previewed it a little bit. But we'll see Max Homa next year. Everyone wants to see Tiger, right? So that would be cool to see him. We saw him a little bit here and there, but not really any talking scenes. So that would be cool to have him. But I sort of don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I liked it. I just think it's funny now. They talk about so much about how, how to make a cut on the PGA Tour. That's talked about in almost every episode.
God, yeah.
And now
do
the PGA,
you know they cut it after 36, and now they're not going to
now
have
they're
the
not
cut in
doing
some
it.
of these events.
Yeah, now they're changing some tournaments. So
They do. I don't want to be that guy. They do the same thing in Drive to Survive, where it's like, did you know that to set the order for the race, they qualify? Like, no way.
Right.
Stunning.
They don't just.
But they do a nice job of kind of telling, like you said, Jim, the non-golfer about how it works. I think they do need to kind of hit that home even harder than it is. But it is funny for myself and you that watch a lot of PGA Tour to have them keep talking about it. You're like, I know.
Yeah, and there also isn't. There isn't a lot that I watched in full swing that was like new to me. But one thing that I don't know if it was new, but you didn't realize it, and it's kind of a strange thing. So, for instance, after some of these events where they were victorious, so like Rory McIlroy win the Tour Championship, spoiler alert, in the last episode, you're out there surrounded by tens of thousands of people, on the range, on the putting green, on the course, and then you win this event and you go back into the locker room and you're just sitting there by yourself,
So that was actually really strange to me because every tournament you see guys are getting congratulated by their family and friends. But yeah, Rory kind of went in the locker room by himself.
Well, I think that's the case for a lot of people because then you'll go in the locker room, you'll decompress a little and then you'll come back out to.
But you usually see their families. At some
point.
But
they're not. The families are not going to go into the locker room with them usually.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe the caddy might, but even I've been in a lot of. That's the other thing. I've had some exposure to these PGA Tour events from not inside the ropes necessarily, but I've had some connections where I was able to go to the caddy tent and stuff at the Travelers, and I caddied myself at some U.S. Open qualifiers and. So the caddies, they separate the caddies and the players pretty much. Like the caddies don't go into the players' locker room, and the players generally don't go into the caddies area. But you think about not only all the people on site, but all the people watching on TV. Like you're literally the whole world's looking at you. It feels like, and it's then 5 minutes later after you sign your scorecard, you're alone in the locker room looking at your phone,
right?
Got
a lot of text messages.
But one thing that I started watching that I would recommend is Shrinking. It's with Jason Segel and Harrison Ford on Apple TV. It's a show where Jason Segel, Harrison Ford, and there's another female actor, I can't think of her name, are psychiatrists or therapists that work in the same office. That's basically the premise, and of course all three of them have their own issues that but it's not the type of show I normally would get into. And in a way, I almost would think that it's contrived and predictable and almost a little over the top in its corniness, except for Harrison Ford's in it. And he just does an amazing job. Like, to me, he makes the show. It's entertaining. And at time it pulls on the heartstrings. But, Jason Segel is like the typical, like every line's like a pun or a joke or, it's like over the top almost. But Harrison Ford being involved in that really made the show. Recommend
is this Harrison Ford's first? I wouldn't say, obviously it's not television in that sense, but series.
The Yellowstone series.
Oh, that's right.
Which I haven't watched that yet. I really want to watch
that too.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I want to watch I started watching Yellowstone when it first came out several years ago, and for whatever reason, about 5 or 6 episodes in, I just stopped watching it. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but so my plan eventually, when I find the time, is to go back and watch the Yellowstone series from the beginning, the 1895 or whatever.
Yeah.
And Harrison Ford got rave reviews for that, and really, really good in Shrinking, which is on Apple Plus. So that's what I would recommend.
Yes, yeah. I'd say, and speaking of that, I'm pretty sure there's a new season of Ted Lasso coming out soon, right?
March 15th. I can't wait. I mean,
that's exciting.
Ted Lasso, one of the best shows of all time, in my opinion.
There you go.
Is there anybody that doesn't like Ted Lasso?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I don't have
no, you haven't seen Ted Lasso?
I don't have Apple TV Plus.
You haven't watched Ted Lasso?
Nah, I don't have Apple TV Plus.
I'll give you my login.
Yeah, that's when I first got the Apple account. was because of Ted Lasso.
Yeah, me too.
And that's how that works. Every show, every one of these services has this breakout hit, and you're like, am I going to pay $4.99 more a month, for this introductory offer or whatever? And you usually end up doing it. And,
Right.
But Apple TV. So quickly before we get out of here, of all the streaming services, if you had to keep just two, let's say just two, or let's say three, because I think on average most people probably would be handling three. Now you're talking about Paramount Plus with the Yellowstone series. You're talking about Apple TV with shows like The Morning Show and what other big hits did they have? Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Then you're talking about Netflix, of course. Everybody's familiar with that. HBO Max, Hulu, Peacock. I mean, my goodness. You can only have three. What would they be?
So I'm keeping Netflix. I think I would go
biggest library. You got to go with Netflix,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
I would go Peacock, but that's more also sports oriented because they have the NFL stuff, but also the second
Prime Video is becoming more requirement for sports fans
right.
too.
Yeah, but for me as well though, I can watch the second half of the NASCAR season on Peacock, so that plays a bit of a factor there for me. I think. Then I'd probably go. This is a tough one now. At this point, I think.
You only have three.
Do I go? I think I gotta go Hulu. Because Hulu, I can get a lot of stuff just the next day. Then at that point,
Yeah.
I think I gotta go Hulu.
Well, I mean, keep in mind, I'm not counting.
This is
you don't have to
tough.
cancel your cable, or like in my case, I
Right.
have YouTube TV, which is technically another streaming service,
Right.
but I'm not counting that because that's like your
Right.
base TV.
Yeah.
How about you, Nate?
I'm definitely keeping Netflix for sure, and then Peacock too because I love The Office. I can't stop watching that show. And then for my third one, I don't really use a third streaming service. I have cable, and then so probably for my sports though, probably either Amazon Prime. Don't watch much movies on that, but for sports, and I guess if you can count ESPN Plus, I know that's not.
Oh,
a streaming
that's a good
service.
point.
I know that's not a streaming service, but for movies or TV
that's a good
shows.
point.
But
Well, it is a
I use
streaming
a lot for
service,
sports.
though.
That's a good point. I was gonna say
I
ESPN
mean, you
Plus
get all the
right there.
hockey games and
All the college basketball.
tons of college basketball.
I might have to put ESPN Plus as my third then. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems like Netflix is the default that everybody's going to say yes to because of the
Yeah, they've been
library.
doing it
Which
a
is
long
big, but
time.
honestly, geez, right now, I did watch Full Swing on Netflix, but Apple TV to me is really, really good programming. It would be, especially with Ted Lasso coming up, it would be hard for me to get rid of that one. But to me, the best of them all is HBO and HBO Max.
Yeah, they do have a good library.
Almost any new show that comes out on HBO is worth a watch. But like you say, Prime Video now doing Thursday Night Football.
I'll say, I mean, Apple TV 2 is in the sports again. They have the Friday night MLB thing,
Baseball, yeah.
and I know that they're still in talks with like the Pac-12 and everything like that too. So
Well, the Pac-12 is going to be
Pac-8, whatever it might end up being. I saw a report last night about a couple more teams probably Van boosting. So I don't know, but they're getting in the sports, getting bigger as well. Their footprint.
Well, I think everybody does because that's a reason that a lot of people feel like it's a required
Right.
subscription service. So if you don't have Amazon Prime, you can't watch the NFL game on Thursday, and your team is playing.
Right.
You're out of luck. But or just general the way fantasy football is, everybody, if there's an NFL game on Thursday night, you're going to want to watch it.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, it's definitely crazy the way things have changed over the years with all these streaming services. And I think in the long run, fast forward to 5 years from now, a lot of these are going to have consolidated or have a shared password. I know ESPN is talking now, just in the past few days, the news came out that they're trying to develop a service where they are consolidating all the regional sports networks under their banner. So one login. And so it's tough. It's a big business, and we just
MSG came out with a streaming service option.
That's right.
It's pretty expensive, but to watch all the New York teams, and what there's 6 New York
if you're a
teams.
Yankees fan, right?
Yeah, and Yankees, Sabres, Devils,
Right.
Rangers, all those teams. But I think it's like $30 a month, which is pretty expensive.
It is expensive unless you're the type of person that watches every single Yankees game or every single New Jersey Devils game.
But if you're one of those people, I feel like you either have cable or you have or you know someone that has cable.
I think that might be more for like the way you bring it up, like the winter when they have to have broadcast stuff. Say hypothetically, they could have Knicks, Islanders, Rangers, Devils, and Sabres all going at the same time, in theory.
Yeah.
Or you live in, Florida or
but then you could just get ESPN Plus.
Yeah, you live somewhere else in the country where you don't get the Yankee games on your standard cable package, and so you can subscribe to MSG. But